Shadow mute. Let's see if it comes through. Yay, sound, yay! Did you get... I actually had my mic like still put away and didn't remember to set it up. I guess I've been a little distracted lately. Thanks everybody for being patient. The mic timer has expired. Yes, oh wow, okay. Well, we got away with it. I think that was the record 30-second mic setup or something. So, yeah, awesome. Wow. Okay. Wow, how many people are in our chat? Whoa. We have like 300 viewers. Jeez. That's crazy. Wow. Thanks everybody for showing up. That's crazy. 300 people. Okay. Yeah, my tap is like begin the hair flips. My hair's still wet because I showered a little bit ago and it's drying. And so, you know, we're going to see it do its thing in real time. So, wow. Okay. So when we get started, oh, is this a real cactus? Is that the first question? You know, it's actually not. I have real cactuses outside where they like to be, but they don't like being inside too much. So it's a fake cactus. It's like it's a Decepticactus. Can turn into something worse. So I'm glad it stays the way it is. Yeah. Okay. Everybody is here. So I normally ask where everybody's from, but I've asked that so much that like 3 seconds ago, I came up with a really fun question I want to ask viewers. What is the last song you listened to? Like the most recent song you listened to? And don't say something to sound cool. You have to be honest. What is the last song you listened to? And I'll tell you guys what the last song I listened to was, which is not cool at all. Let's see, everybody. I'm waiting for the chat to catch up with my questions too. So I can't wait to see everybody start naming K-pop bands because you have to be honest. Australia, Las Vegas. I'm also seeing people saying where they're from, which I do appreciate. It's actually very exciting. Oh, here we go. Vampire of the, okay. Oh, there's so many good songs coming through. Oh, Sly Players is here, buddy. Hey, Roundabout, yes. Wow. Oh, I'm going to have to come back and reference this now for song stuff to listen to. No pressure. Nice. Oh, we're getting so many cool answers. The last song I listened to was called Talk to Me by Skrillex and Fortet. So I'm not cool, okay? So you guys, if you want to hear it, you can hear what I was listening to literally while I was listening to that instead of setting up my mic, apparently. So, wow, so many cool answers. Whoa. Oh, we have Black Lodge, we have Chubby Funster, we have Lord Mattias. I crashed your stream last night because thank you for letting me do that. I just was like, oh, this is so cool, and I just jumped in. And you were very patient with letting me do that. Wow, people, okay, and then we have people from all over the place too. So, wow. All right. Kelsey Dion likes dubstep. I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Does anyone actually hate dubstep is the main question here. You know, is it really, I think it's hard to find someone who won't at least like bob their head to it. There we go. So, ooh, Black Labs loves Fortet. Okay, cool. See, there you go. I feel like the existence of Fortet on the byline for that song is like what elevates it, you know, because it's like Skrillex and you're like, what? And then it's like Fortet and you're like, okay. All right, so we're getting started. Y'all, thanks for joining me for this AMA. I really am so grateful that people care enough to want to ask me questions. I really, it's crazy. It's very vindicating to want to be asked things about my game, and I think you guys are doing me a favor rather than the other way around. You're letting me feel like I matter. And I thank you so much. So I wanted to focus on things people want to know about anything, about the Kickstarter, about its products, about Shadowdark, about publishing, you know, anything. So I'm going to start going through our questions here. And if you guys have a question, the chat goes by a little fast for me. And so if you want to say like question and before your question, or even in like all caps question, it's more likely to catch my eye. And I don't want to intentionally or unintentionally skip anybody here. So I'll do my best. And I think we had our first question come through from Conradson. You mentioned the campaign setting was designed or inspired by West Marches. Is it intended to be played in that style or just an inspiration? It's intended to be played in that style. And I think, so in the preview documents on the Kickstarter page, I have one of the spreads that talks a little bit about like an overview of what West Marches is. And that is a terminology thing that Ben Robbins created actually many years ago at this point, to try to describe a style of gameplay that is sort of hearkening to the way that the original creators of the game sometimes ran their games. And they didn't run their games in this style always, but like there are some things that are generally true, such as having like an open table and a rotating list of players in a sort of player-driven style that I think really was very common. And then on occasion, you know, the originators of the game would use real-time elements in keeping track of the passage of time. And that, I think, is especially key to a West Marches style campaign. And so I do give some advice about how to do that later in the chapter, and also just some general advice about running open style sandboxes, because you know, we've had the last 3-ish editions of the game that have focused not necessarily on exploration as much as other pillars of the game. And I think along with that, we've seen the advent of very like story-driven campaigns becoming more accepted as like what D&D is. And there's a little bit of unlearning that has to be done to bring it back to the style needed for like open sandbox play. And so, you know, there's so much good advice about how to do that out on the internet, and deeper and better advice than I could give. But I do touch on it and try to give advice on what West Marches is, how to run those styles of campaigns, and sort of the factors you'll want to consider, and some temperature checks to make sure you're keeping in line with that style. The questions you should be asking yourself as the game master, to make sure that you're not the one driving the action, that the players are, because that's ultimately what it is. It's a very player-driven gameplay style. So, wow, I went on and on. Let me see if I can find some more of your lovely questions. Questions: are the lost deities going to be explored in the Western Reaches further? Yes, actually, there's more implied setting about them, because in particular, the Lost were meant always to be an open door for the game master to insert material, unlike the other gods, right? So the other gods are concretely defined. But there are some things that will always be true in Shadowdark games, even in more codified settings, where I want to give the game master flexibility with them. So there's a little bit more given about them. They actually get a full double-page spread entry like all the other gods do, that explains like their tenets. It does define them as chaotic gods, which I think might even be a bit of a step outside the original loose interpretation of what they were. It ties them more closely to the Shadowdark, and even to some of the classes that are in our 5th zine, which is Shadowdark focused. And I think it makes some more implications about who they are without being too strident, you know? But yes, I'm having a lot of fun. Each god gets a 2-page spread. And one of the facing pages on those spreads is like the ways in which priests can perform penance particular to that deity, like what they want for acts of penance. And I think that's something that's been really fun to suggest ideas for. We did that with the Seer class in Curse Scroll 2, where Seers have spellcasting and need to do penance. They don't cast like wizards, they cast like priests. And we defined some specific acts of penance, and I thought that was a really easy way to provide flavor for the class and give the game master like plot hooks and ideas that wasn't too restrictive. And so we're doing that same thing for the gods, especially because this being a campaign setting, I think that characters are going to want to have more defined knowledge about the gods, but the whole point is not to go overboard either and go too crazy on making things restrictive. Wow, there's so many good questions. I gotta answer faster. Okay. Oh wow, I'm gonna miss things. I'll try to go down. I'm gonna just scroll back up to a reasonable move back up. Did this launch in March intentionally? Well, yeah, it did, but I don't know if there's a coincidence that I am not aware of associated with March. Oh, March, duh. Wow. Wow, I need more coffee. Yeah, we're doing marches in March. Yeah. To be honest, we planned to launch this in March because we wanted it to coincide with GaryCon, because I'm going to be at GaryCon, and it's always really exciting to have a project active while you're there, because you get to talk to people about what they want to see and stuff, and there's still time to incorporate that feedback. So that's why we did it in March. But also West Marches. You're right. Maybe that was an unintended link there. New sticker for GaryCon. I'm gonna do you one better. If you're at GaryCon, come find us, because we have a whole sheet of pogs that are luck tokens that we're gonna give out to people who come by our booth. And then if you're a backer, show us your pledge, and we're also gonna give you a shiny Stingbat Slammer that you can use to play pogs or as a luck token. It's holographic and cool. So I'm really excited for that. Okay, question: how to introduce a sandbox game to a group of newer players? Ooh, I'm gonna have some advice about this in the book. And one of the things that I think is key, and I think common advice you'll hear, is you want to give them a starting town and then a nearby dungeon, a nearby thing to pursue. So getting the players active in a sandbox setting, I think, can be the most challenging moment when you start it, because there are no rumors or hooks that they're aware of yet, and so you're trying to feed them things to catch their interest and teach them that this is your world, and you decide how you want to approach these hooks I'm throwing your way. And I actually think that that's very confusing. I'm turning my mic towards my face a little better. I think that's something that a lot of groups aren't used to, is just being handed total agency from day one, And so I think, first of all, you have to be clear with your group before you even sit down to play. This is going to be driven entirely by your decisions. I'm going to put things out there as the game master, rumors. Whenever I give you a rumor, there's something about it that's worth following up on. You want to make sure the players know that. I also personally believe that all rumors should have a kernel of truth to them. I think false rumors can be very demoralizing for players to pursue, and I know false rumors were a big part of the early days of gaming. But the point of a rumor is to get the players out and exploring. And so when you reward that behavior, you're going to enforce it. So that's why I think that rumors really should mostly be actionable and have a kernel of truth. So that's what you do. The classic Keep on the Borderlands and Caves of Chaos is often cited as one of the very best beginnings of a sandbox style adventure, because it has the keep itself, which is a good home base, and then it has a nearby abundance of adventuring sites, the most notable one being the Caves of Chaos. And so that's such an excellent way to start an open sandbox, and then the players are bouncing between the site and town, and they're picking up rumors in town, and they're picking up experience at the adventuring site, so this is beginning to open up the world to them. And that's how I would go about it. So, Sly Flourish asked a question, a hard one. Can you talk about the overlap between Cursed Scrolls and Western Reaches and why they're designed that way? What is the percentage roughly of the overlap? Absolutely. This is one of the biggest questions people have, and it's a very fair question. So the Western Reaches was not a product I ever thought I would write, honestly. And it's funny because people asked me even a year ago, what are you making next? Are you going to make a campaign setting? And I was like, a campaign setting? That's not something I could ever, I literally would tell people no. And that was honest. I never thought I would make one. Because I am the kind of person who needs to develop material organically. That's how Shadowdark came about. I developed it through gameplay over several years, and in response to needs that I felt at the table through gameplay and things that I wanted to do that came about as a result of running games. And so, I wrote the first 3 Cursed Scroll zines along with the first Kickstarter, and those were mini settings. Each of them were mini settings, and they were mini settings that I used in my own home games, and that's how the material kind of arose. And so over time, I wrote 3 more of them kind of under the same idea, where this was material I was using or drawing from or intending to use in various ways. And I realized that I had written a campaign setting by doing these 6 zines. I was like, you know what? Everything I write is in context to itself. So I don't write adventures in a vacuum when I'm writing something. I am kind of imagining where its place fits in an overall world, because I run my games in such a way where I want to have it tie into what I think my players might pursue. And so I consider those things. And I wrote the 6 zines and was like, wow, all this would take was connecting tissue to put them together. And then we have a big setting. And I know some people out there were already doing that with our zines. And so, so I started writing the connective tissue. And then naturally that meant that there was crossover. So like if we have a big hex map that unites all 6 of those micro hex maps, there has to be crossover, because the last thing I wanted was people like running the hex crawl out of the main book and then having to jump over to one of the cursed scrolls to get the bit in that book. And so, you know, it's I think if I were a superior designer who could ground stuff or design stuff from the ground up, there wouldn't have been crossover. But because of the organic way that the setting came about, it just had to be that way. And so when there is crossover, the reason it's in there is to provide usability, not because I'm trying to be like, haha, you have to buy it twice. You know, all of those decisions were very carefully made to make it so that you can run the setting without running into massive speed bumps. And I also didn't want to make the Cursed Scroll zines utterly useless as products that stand on their own. In fact, a very difficult consideration was to make the 2 core books a product that could stand on their own, and then the zines a product that could stand on their own. And taken together, they would enhance each other, but they could be taken separately, because I know some people want to have drop-in micro settings, or they want to build their version of the Reaches and use the zines to just drop into that. So we were basically developing 2 different types of product in tandem that reference each other, work together, but could be held separate from each other without you totally missing anything. And so to answer the second part of that question, what overlap is there? Classes. Well, there's, you know, actually it's funny. Kiwi, one of the mods in our Discord server, started working on this really excellent Venn diagram, and I ended up kind of using that to make one that we put onto the Kickstarter page, but it's linked there. I felt like it would be a little bit overwhelming to newcomers to see all of that, because unless you're familiar with our material, a lot of what's listed there, you're going to be like, I have no idea what this is. So it's linked there, but it's not like displayed. And it talks about where there's overlap and where there's unique stuff. So overlap includes classes, spells, and monsters. What's unique to the Western Reaches books are the full hex crawl and the rules required to unite it. So like overarching weather rules, overarching hex crawling rules, descriptions of the region, expansions to those regions. Like each micro region in the zines is self-contained, but in some cases I expanded them slightly. I had to add additional hexes to those surrounding areas. So those are included in the big books. Whereas in the smaller zines, one notable thing that's exclusive to those is that the City of Masks is a city crawl, not a hex crawl. And it didn't really have a place in the Western Reaches books, because the Western Reaches is hex crawling. So the entirety of Cursed Scroll 6, almost all of it is exclusive to that zine, because it's about one of the city-states in the Western Reaches. You don't need it to run the hex crawl, but having it is helpful. So most of the stuff in there is not in the books. But the hex crawl material that's between them all, I did reprint for ease of use. I went on and on again right there. Percentage of overlap. It's really hard to... I actually haven't thought of it in percentages. I think... So if player-facing stuff is about a third of each zine, that's true, depending on if there's spells. All of that is in the Western Reaches books. And then if hex crawling is like a quarter to a third of some zines, that's all in the Western Reaches books too. So I would say that roughly half of each zine is put into the Western Reaches books themselves. Not in all cases, but that's just a rule of thumb. Okay, I'm going to jump to the next question because I just went on and on. Will the metaphysical secrets of the mysterious objects known as hammers be revealed in the Western Reaches? I don't think that answer will ever be truly understood by humankind. I can't break the laws of reality, can I? I can't. So I don't know. I don't think hammers will ever truly be understood. Will I continue the Solo Dark series? Yeah, definitely. It's the solo gameplay series. We left off on like episode 3. Whoa, that was I don't know what's going on. Even I am astounded by it. I'm okay. But yes, I will be making more of them. I just had to put it on pause because of all the Kickstarter stuff, but I've been really enjoying making them. And I will certainly do more of them. I can't just leave that story hanging. So, fear not, fear not. Thank you for following along with them if you do. Question, if you took the Shadowdark roller coaster and got teleported to the Western Reaches, where would you be most scared of being deposited? There is Morzamotha is the specifically detailed Shadowdark region beneath the Western Reaches. It's a very bad place. It's a very bad place to be. I would not want to wind up in Morzamotha. And it's the fun part about that one is that it actually, okay, so the Western Reaches is very big, right? It's like the size of the state of Nevada roughly in square miles. And it is I didn't actually put Morzamotha in a specific place. I made mechanics around it so that the first time the characters go too deep, that's where they go. Because otherwise it's very unlikely that they would ever find Morzamotha because it's so huge and there's so many like caves and possible entrances to it. So there's a whole like subsystem in the Western Reaches GM book about what happens the first time the characters delve too deep and they find Morzamotha. And then that's where it becomes fixed in your game world. So it's likely not going to be in the same place for any group that runs this setting. Okay, so I'm working on a supplement for Shadowdark focused on exotic locations. Got any pointers for Kickstarter? Start building your audience long before you launch. I think that's what really helped us with the first go around. And then, you all were here and aware of the development of this before I ever launched it. And I think that really lets you hit the ground running. So spend just as much time sharing your work out and finding people who are interested in it as you do writing. And that's what I would say. Comment, I just want to thank you for the design of the game, mechanics in the Shadowdark core book. I have a disability and your excellent design means I can play when I'm low on energy. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm really happy to hear that. Yeah. I think that making it easier to run is always worthwhile. That's a huge, usability is a huge factor in every decision we make, even layout, paper selections, size selections, all of it is very, very focused on usability. So thank you, Stacy. That's really good to know. Question, how much of the new stuff will you allow in the Foundry module? Oh, yeah, probably a fair amount. We're working with Fantasy Grounds and Foundry as we can. And right now I haven't been able to do a ton on that front just because I've been so swamped with the Kickstarter stuff, but I do think, we're absolutely going to welcome getting stuff set up on those platforms as soon as I'm able. I think that's really a lot of people like to do that, use those VTTs. Okay, question. So Inkcasters are getting alignment-dependent spells. Are priests getting anything that is deity-dependent, rituals or spells or something like that? They are. Not spells in this case, not quite yet. It didn't seem like I had an avenue through which to do that was quite right for the Western Reaches. There will be a new knight class that, full disclosure, somewhat like the Knight of St. Idris, will have the ability to cast some spells in a priestly fashion. And there are going to be more priest-focused things added to each deity's entry. But there's going to be more around penance, tenets and common practices, beliefs, how these deities are viewed specifically in the Western Reaches, stuff like that. So priests do get plenty of stuff, but just we're not changing their spell list currently. Question, it doesn't seem like you have that big of a public on social media. What is your method of reaching as many people as you do regardless? Oh, well, social media, I think everybody who's a publisher can benefit from being on it, but I think that there's a tendency to overfocus on it because social media naturally throttles your ability to reach people down to just a fraction of a percentage of your followers. And so there are just more effective ways to stay in touch with your supporters. And I think Discord's a great way. I've had an email newsletter since I started publishing, and that is just a very, very tremendous source of people who want to follow along with my work. And so between everything out there, I think that my opinion is that the three best blends of social media would be having a YouTube presence, having a Discord, and then cultivating a newsletter that people want to read, not just not just something, you know, that I think that it's very important to put in the effort to make them fun and to give people cool things and to make it something people want to read, you know. That's it. I don't necessarily view it as a marketing avenue so much as just a way to share stuff with people. And then when you launch a product, you of course want to tell your newsletter about it, but you know, that's not its sole purpose. So, okay. Question, in your opinion, what is the best way to prepare coffee? Freshly ground beans, Polish single shot of espresso, and put lightly foamed, probably almond milk into it, or real milk. That's what I do. But I used to have way too much. I used to drink way too much espresso, especially when I worked in corporate tech, and I had to cut back a lot because it was. You know, it gives you power, but that power can be used for, you know, dangerous and horrible things if you can't focus it, you know? All right. Question, can you show non-book items in the products? Oh, like what, like hints of them on the Kickstarter page? I think so. Yeah, we have some images of them up. But I'll try to get more, you know? All right. Question, what new class excites you the most? Ooh, so, okay, everybody, the class that I shared in the preview documents is the Kizian Archer, and I really like the mounted classes, and actually it's funny because there's another one called the Desert Rider that is like, I think by the statistics, the least popular class on Shadowdarklings, but I really like them, and so I was like, oh, are people gonna really hate me for making a second one? But I think the Kizian Archer is very, very cool and very flavorful for the region that they come from, and so I'm excited. But I think the one I find the most delightful is the Weirdling, which is one from Curse Scroll 5. And I was reading it to my wife, and we were actually laughing until we had tears in our eyes about how funny we thought that the hideous biology ability was and ways in which you could use it. And I think if you are laughing and smiling to yourself as you design something, that's where you want to be. You want it to be something that makes you cackle, because then I think other people will appreciate it. So I had so much fun designing that class, and it's truly bizarre, and I love how weird it is. Question, will we get a scroll of all the stretch goal classes of both Kickstarter campaigns together? Well, those will actually be. The ones from the first campaign will be in the Western Reaches books. So yes, in a way, you will. Question, is all the content already created? There's more to work on still. We came to Kickstarter with it done enough that I'm like, yes, I feel we can fulfill this very imminently. But I'm still tweaking and refining things. I'm still writing and messing with the hex crawls to better interlink them. And so, you know, I think my current estimate is that we should be able to deliver everything around 8 weeks after the close of the Kickstarter. And like, you know, that can fluctuate because writing and art are things that kind of happen in tandem to fill gaps with each other. And all the illustrators we work with are magnificent. Special shout out to Mark Lyons, who I ridiculously forgot to list on the Kickstarter page the day we went live, and like that's probably the most embarrassing thing I've ever done. Mark Lyons is a magnificent illustrator, one of my favorite people to work with. I quickly added him once I realized my mistake, but you know, all of our art team is so speedy and amazing, and they were there for me during the first Kickstarter when we had to do a total about face. And I actually rewrote Shadowdark without any OGL content in it, which meant that we needed to commission like 30 pieces of art to fill gaps. And I kid you not, the artists were the true heroes there because they all got like 30 pieces of art back to me within a week. And it's just incredible. And so they're at it again. They're quickly making art as the needs come up. And I think that, you know, they're very trustworthy and reliable. So we will not see slowdowns related to illustrators. Okay, so... Question, what was it like making Shadowdark from working on D&D books at first before making Shadowdark? I felt like I was doing something really dumb when I was making Shadowdark. I was like, this is not a wise thing to do, but I felt very driven to make it. It was so exciting to write, and it was kind of something that just like, you know, as I got to working on it, really poured out of me. So it felt like a relief in a way to get to make my own system that really spoke to what I find important. And I think that system designers find the process a little addicting. I think that people who do it actually really enjoy it and often go on to make other games. And so I recommend everyone try it. It's really fun. It's really fun to tinker with rules and try to dial in what you feel is important and run it at the table and test it out and see the effects that it has. It's very gratifying. So yeah. How will adventures released after Western Reaches be incorporated into the world? Well, that's a really good question, because actually all the adventures I've released, including my 5e material, are incorporated into the Western Reaches. I don't know if a lot of people know that. This is by no means saying people have to go buy my 5e material. I'm setting things up so that you could create your own adventures out of the hooks and things. But I've always written all of that with the game world that I run my games in mind. And so things that I published exclusively in the 5e space are mentioned in the Western Reaches. And I'm not sure that will totally stop. I think going forward, when I release an adventure, if my intention was to have it be in the Western Reaches, I'll probably make a note of that somewhere. I'll suggest where to place it, but I also view the Reaches as a really self-contained thing at this point, where because it has a box set and all of that, I don't plan to write any further Cursed Scrolls set in the Western Reaches. I hopefully will write more Cursed Scrolls, but I feel like this is a way for us to move into new horizons, develop content in a new direction. And so I think that, and maybe this is something I didn't say so clearly or have never said, but this is the Western Reaches setting. What I'm publishing, this is it. And anything else we release for it would be minor. So yeah. Question, why aren't you wearing all your any medals? They clank so loudly when I walk. God. It's still hard to believe. I'm bringing them to GaryCon because we're putting a Shadowdark book in a little display booth, and it would look very alone by itself. So I'm gonna just put its medals around it, I every time I try to take them through airport security, they stop me and search my bag because they're like, what is this? And then they look at it and they're like, is this a trophy? And I'm like, yeah. All right. Question, will you add a construct or warforged ancestry? Not to the Western Reaches. I think that the ancestries are set in stone for them. I am a very limited in scope ancestry style designer because I really like sword and sorcery style gameplay. And I acknowledge that Dungeons and Dragons, as it is perceived from a general fantasy vanilla setting, incorporates Tolkien-esque ancestries like dwarves and all of that. And so I did want to include that because that also provides backwards compatibility with classic adventures and dungeons that have been released all throughout the history of the game. To ignore those ancestries would be to basically bork Shadowdark's compatibility with D&D. But I really like human-centric campaigns, and the Western Reaches are explicitly human-centric. I actually am going to offer a percentage population chart, and players, if they want to stick with those percentages, there's a roll chart where you can roll to see what ancestry you are. And kobolds and half-elves are the two new ancestries that we'll have, but kobolds only are a 1% appearing ancestry. So, my intention is to make sure that things are realistically constrained for those who want that more human-centered style campaign, if they want it. It's not like you have to do it that way, but I offered a method by which you could if you want. Question, is the Kickstarter mentions players can learn talents from certain trainers. What does that look like and what kind of talents can one learn? Oh, that's one of my favorite things in this. Every region has at least one NPC that you can find and the characters can use their downtime to learn concrete abilities from those NPCs. And, each region actually has probably, I would say more than one, but there's one who's detailed very, very, with a lot of detail. There's one standout one, and then there's smaller ones who could teach a specific smaller talent. But someone like Uncle Grigor, if people remember in those familiar with Cursed Scroll 1, it's a forest and swamp style setting, and there's this old witch guy who lives out in the swamp named Uncle Grigor, and I developed an entire system by which he can teach characters, specifically witches, new talents that benefit them. And there's some that are specifically geared towards specific classes, and there's some that are more broad. And I feel like this is a way to encourage players to explore the world because what do players like more than getting cool stuff for their characters? And so this was very fun. It requires you to use your downtime and to complete certain specific tasks. If you complete them to the satisfaction of the teacher, then that teacher will teach your character something. And there's not a check required. It's like if you do the task, which is unto itself a plot hook, then you learn the thing. So I think I think and hope that players are going to have so much fun pursuing those things. Question: how much wilderness versus places people live in here? Closer to Middle Earth, very empty. Yes, the reaches are pretty empty. There are 5 major city-states that are given some detail. And there are many towns and villages mentioned, but they're not given like a full out like explanation map, like here's the city itself. Like, and the reason there is because it would be impossible, I think, to actually fully detail every town and village while making the book practical. And there's so many tools in core Shadowdark that game masters are going to want and need to use to detail the towns that become relevant to their groups. Just in the same way that we recommend with prep, I think a common recommendation is to develop what you need. Don't develop every corner of the world, develop what you need. That's true here too. And if I overdeveloped this setting, it would make it hard to use, you know? You would suddenly have to worry about all these interconnections that might be invisible to you until you read every single entry and like memorized all of it. And that's not what I'm going for. I want it to be easy to use for people. And I want to give enough that you can build off of it when needed, but not feel restricted by what's laid out. And so it's going to be absolutely necessary for game masters to develop and build their own material in this world, depending on where their players go. Yeah. Okay. Question: when do we get access to the new PDF files if we back the new Kickstarter? So Kickstarter basically requires our funds to clear for all of the pledges before I can really release any material, which usually takes about 2 weeks after the close of the Kickstarter. So what I have ready to show, I will definitely send out by then, and that most certainly includes already existing products like the Shadowdark core rules and anyone who got zines of the first 3, who got PDFs of the first 3 zines. It's very likely we'll have other material to share by then too. Like Curse Scroll 4 is like very, very, very close to being completely finished with layout. We're just doing like a couple of tweaks to cartography and a couple brush ups to cartography now at this point, and a little bit more writing. So, stuff like that. Curse Scroll 5 is awaiting its final cartography, and then it's also pretty much like ready to share. So there's going to be quite a bit that comes out right away. How was the experience raising $1 million this time around compared to the first time? Just as surprising. Because I was sure, I maybe I always underestimate myself, but I think what I really underestimate is the audience, like you guys, because and not in any detrimental way. I just am shocked that people are that excited to support the material. I always try to set myself up so that I'm not disappointed. I'm like, well, I think it would be reasonable to guess that we'll do this much versus this much. And it's a little bit evident in where we set the stretch goals. You can kind of guess where how far we thought we were going to reach, both this time around and the original Shadowdark Kickstarter. So I'm constantly absolutely gobsmacked by how much people jump to support Shadowdark. And it's like, you may be at the risk of sounding like pretentious. I think that I haven't seen something like this ever. I haven't seen something like this, and it's like hard to believe that it's happening in a way, So totally gobsmacked. Any plans for convention play like Pathfinder Society or Living Greyhawk? Yeah, for sure. We've been partnering with Lurking Fears, which is a marvelous team of people who get professional, super highly skilled game masters together to run organized like events at conventions. It's like one step shy of organized play, where it's not necessarily like you can jump your character between the sessions. But I think it'd be cool to get there. And honestly, as soon as we get this Kickstarter out the door or really like locked in, one of my biggest goals for the coming year is to really, really put forth an enormous amount of effort into friendly local game stores and like getting Shadowdark into it and doing things that maybe big companies can't do. Like, I think because we're a small company, We can show up places, we can run events ourselves, we can be really engaged with the community and what they want, organize play. We can talk directly to local game stores and get feedback from what they want. And I think that that's kind of a superpower in a way. And we're really intending to like go all in on that with friendly local game store stuff after this Kickstarter. So that's like my next big project I'm super looking forward to. Full reveal, we're looking to set up like the Shadow League. We're going to probably call it the Shadow League, which will be highly supported in-store stuff. And how that's going to look, we're still working on, and we're still seeking feedback from local game stores. However, that said, all of you listening, if you have a friendly local game store that wants to do wholesale with us or be supported in running events and stuff, please tell them to email us at wholesale@thearcanelibrary.com. We are selling direct to local game stores at the absolute best prices we can afford, which are usually better than what big distributors can do, because we're kind of cutting out the people along the way who need to take a cut, understandably, because they're doing work too. But we're just going straight to local game stores, and that's what we're doing for this Kickstarter as well. If you're seeking wholesale, we don't have a wholesale tier because we're just going direct, so we can give you better pricing. So all of the material from this Kickstarter is going to be available before we put it up for general sale to any wholesaler who wants to work with us in that way. So just email us. I'd be so excited. Question: how do you use Session 0 an open style campaign? I think it's important to make your characters together for the game master to tell the players sort of a bit of backdrop about the world. I think that it'd be great for the characters to decide like if they're part of a faction or the same faction, which is a thing presented in the player's guide, like sort of an overarching organization that you can move up in to gain benefits, that helps tie your characters together, especially because Western Reaches is a West Marches style campaign where it's kind of expected or encouraged that players have multiple characters, and this is not simply to shore up the risk of death. This is because the sessions are very player driven and mission driven, and you might want to have a different character for the job. You might want to have a character who's a bit more of a villain, one who's a bit more of a hero, one who's going to go out and save the town on one session, and then the other one who's going to go try to like steal the treasure from the sorcerer's tower on the next. And you're not limited to playing just one character. You can develop multiple characters over time. And there's even some high-level benefits within the factions that allow you to keep your like characters in a location that you have ownership over that gives them some benefits. So it's kind of like it's as close as I'll ever get probably to Stronghold stuff. So Session 0 is probably make your first characters, or maybe make 2, and then you're deciding, who to use between each session. All right, Kelsey, what things have you done as actions for priests to take penance? Let me see. One of them is, I think I was last working on Madeira's stuff. I should look at it now. I'm going to look at it. Got to pull open the document here. And they're each kind of suited to the god. Obviously the penance for the Caddic gods is going to be a little bit more in your face. What was I last working on? I was last kind of finishing up ones for Shun the Vile. So like an example of some penance. One is like Shun's very centered around learning secrets and stuff. So like a low tier one would be learn a minor secret, write it in ink, and then burn it in offering. So you have to go find out some secret that matters. You actually have to go through the steps of collecting that. And like one is Shun's holy symbol. Like the gods all have their holy symbol also shown for the first time in this book, because also something that needs to be somewhat defined when we're talking about a more concrete setting. I didn't want game masters to have to make that up if they didn't want to. So one is wear a blindfold and keep a candle lit without fail for 1 week. And that's a form of penance, and it also represents Shun's holy symbol. And actually that takes your character out of adventuring for a week. So this is a consideration with West Marches style gameplay. If you have a task that's going to take you off the map for a week, you're going to have to pilot a different character during that time. So a lot of penance is built around those considerations as well. So, can you tell us more about City of Masks, such as its lore, population, or history? It's the biggest city in the Reaches. It's like a sort of a Venetian style, in a way, city. Definitely inspired by a lot of things I've read and some travel I've been fortunate enough to do. It has a population of about 90,000 people. It is a very old city that was built up slowly along the Tremetora River, which flows out into the Last Sea. And it currently is headed by Duke Lauren de Montmar, who is a good person. It's not like it's the city itself is sort of a place of like romance and mystery, but I think unlike the city-state of the Invincible Overlord and some other city-states in this region, it is actually like not a like through and through kind of like evil, like you're on your own. Like the people who run the city are making an attempt to maintain the rule of law and enact goodness and justice, imperfect though it may be. So it's the most lawfully aligned city in the region. So question, what alignment is your hair? Probably chaotic. My hair is the main character. I'm just here along for the ride. Question, if I get the map and the 6 zines, do they easily link? Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. They're set up to do so. Question, was it hard to make a fantasy setting that is open and not too far askew when there are already so many out there? Yeah, definitely. I think we had because of the development of the Cursed Scrolls, there was a really strong like thematic understanding of each general region that we were building up. For the most part, there's 16 regions in the Western Reaches, and like 6-ish of them are overlapped, but there were 10 built like entirely, or 10 or 11 built entirely from scratch. So we had some overarching direction, and I wanted to make this setting a little bit vanilla fantasy, such that you could incorporate a lot of past vanilla fantasy material into it, but also have a little bit of interest and an unusual edge to it, especially as you move towards like the outer boundaries of it and you're starting to encounter, like different peoples and places. So I think I hope that I was able to maintain sort of a good blend of familiar and unfamiliar for people, and I guess we'll find out. We'll find out. All right, how do you see Shadowdark fitting in the broader TTRPG hobby? Do you see it more as just a shiny new thing and perhaps the influencer of the next 5 to 10 years? Well, that's a good question. I want the game to stick around for as long as possible. I love writing for it, and I view it as my central purpose and career. So, I don't think nobody is like, I don't think anybody is always the most influential thing out there forever. But what my hope is that we can build a really strong and enduring audience for Shadowdark, and I can continue to write material for it for as long as people want it. So, even before this Kickstarter, if I thought I knew how things were going to go, I was wrong. So I almost hesitate to predict, but as long as you all want Shadowdark material, I'm going to write it. And then I hope that is a long time. So, and I'm going to continue to try to get it into game stores and build it up and support it and support its publishers. A big dream of mine is for third-party publishers for the game to have genuine careers for themselves, writing if they wish to for the game. So, that's, I think that is a very fortunate place I find myself in. And then I want that for other people too. So, awesome. Let's see. Any plans on making spell failure for more powerful spell weird effects, like permanent mutations or weird quirks to use in roleplay? Yeah. I haven't changed the spell mishap lists from what they are. Who knows? The spellcaster we develop maybe we'll need to. But we one of the stretch goals we unlocked at $1 million was we're going to design a new spellcaster class with input from the community, and depending on what it is, we might need new failure stuff. But otherwise, I don't have any concrete changes to the spell failures. There are some classes that can get mutations. Check out the Weirdling class, and you will see. Okay. Do you think you will work next on expanded rule sets, or perhaps offer more campaign settings? Every time I guess at what I'm going to work on next, I'm wrong. Because things just seem to, like, I almost feel like sometimes I don't decide what I'm going to work on. The things I'm working on become their own thing almost on their own. Like, I felt that way about creating Shadowdark, actually, and about creating the Western Reaches. Like, I I had every intention to like not write a campaign setting, and then that's ended up being what I did anyway, because it's just what came out. When I sat down to write, like that's the material that appeared. And so I don't know what's going to appear next. I imagine it'll be something pertaining to like adventures. I am I am writing a monster book with my nephew. He's just started playing D&D. He's just old enough, and I love him so much, and he's so excited about monsters and stuff. So this is like a side project that it's not something that I'm like, oh, this is a Shadowdark mainline product, but he loves making up monsters as kids do and drawing them. And we started writing a little monster book together, and he drew this piece of art that has this awesome like blue and red like contrasting like crazy looking monster on the front of it. Like he has a very good instinct for color pairings. And he wrote, "I will summon a demon" on it. And so that's going to be the title of the book, is "I will summon a demon," and it's going to have his art, and we're going to work on that for fun. So I'd probably take a short break from publishing like mainline material to work on "I will summon a demon" with my nephew, a monster book. Question, do you ever hit up drive through and just look at all things Shadowdark? Yeah, there's so much good stuff on there. So much good stuff. Some of the folks in the chat have published really landmark things on drive through. Also on itch.io. Also, I believe on Amazon. Like Lord Tath's work, I think, is available on Amazon specifically. And Tath wrote the first setting, like actual setting for Shadowdark while Shadowdark was still in beta. So like that's kind of a cool nugget. I think you should check out Soulblight. It's a really interesting and beautiful and like ornamented like sword and sorcery the way that Tath writes has an enormous amount of poetic gravity that I really enjoy reading. So there's stuff everywhere. It's so cool. Question, what advice would you have for someone interested in writing game content? Start writing it. Don't second guess yourself so much. I think people hesitate to get started and think I have to do this right. I have to know what I'm doing from the start. And like, you'll do fine from the start. You'll do fine. And you'll probably learn things. But like, one thing I was really worried about is like, when I start publishing, am I going to look back in 10 years and think that my original material was so bad that I'm almost embarrassed to see it? And by and large, I found that that's not the case. Like, if you're running games and you're playing and you already know what you like and you have a little bit of experience with it, I don't think you're going to write trash. I think what you're writing is going to be like pretty actionable. And pursue people who give genuine advice, especially critical advice. It's very hard to seek out critical advice that's helpful and honest, and you got to make the effort to try to do that. Like Bryce Lynch has a blog called 10-Foot Pole, and you know, I think he's known for being harsh, of course, but he also gives extremely excellent adventure writing feedback. And so you have to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff. Like, you want to read that and see what you can learn from it. You know, seek to learn. Don't reject advice just because it might be a little bit abrasive, you know? Question, what's your favorite location you came up with for the setting? I could never choose. There's more than like 250 locations. I had a lot of fun though writing about the monastery that the monks of Yag-Kesh are from. I just think it's like, I love that kind of stuff. You guys will see that. The monastery of Yag-Kesh is cool. Lots of weird stuff going on in there. Question, planning on making a hardcover for Shadowdark? It's always felt like a booklet thing to me. I don't know. I haven't thought about that. I did think about incorporating it into the premium edition rules. That was a thought we had for a second, but I haven't had a chance to ask everybody what they think about that. Because part of me hesitates to like make a version that's like of the book that's more expensive with like new material in it, because it just doesn't feel nice to me. It feels like forcing people to buy a more expensive thing just to get like the material they otherwise wouldn't have, and it just doesn't feel right. So because Shadowdark's available out there for free, I was like, well, maybe it would be useful to add it then to this book, simply because it requires the core rules to function. Like, you can't just run Shadowdark from the pamphlet. You need the core rules. Like, there's so many role tables and things that you need from the core rules. So really you need them both to work together anyway. So let me know what you guys think. I'll have to scroll quite a bit in our chat to get there, but I'd be very interested to see what people think about us possibly adding the Solo Dark rules to the new premium edition. Oh, there's really nice comments here. Thank you. OSR Grognard here. Just want to say keep being awesome. I get to play Shadowdark once a week and it's awesome. I teach RPG studies on a campus and definitely gave Shadowdark trash. Oh, thank you so much for doing that. That's so cool that you teach that. I'm really happy to see that RPGs in general are being sort of taught more, like they're being taken more seriously in the way that comic books were taken more seriously as an art form, like as the genre progressed into like the graphic novel space and stuff. So I'm happy to see RPGs being given that same respect. Question: how does the GM prepare not knowing what dungeons their players are going to visit? Oh, that's such a good question. Yes. You only have to stay one step ahead of your players in these kinds of games. And the game master is playing just as much as the players. That's one thing, is that you get so much opportunity to improvise, to build things. You're going to have to in these settings. But you only have to stay one session ahead of your players. And one really key thing about West Marches style games, especially Ben Robbins talks about this a lot in his blog Ars Ludi, which I linked to in the book, but also in one of the videos I posted recently about the West Marches style gameplay, or Western Reaches. The players are probably going to be forming groups of mission-based characters, and it's not always going to be the same group of players or characters. And the goal is that they give the game master a heads up about what they're planning to do in their next session. Like, hey, we four got together because we got a rumor that there's this magic sword in the dungeon nearby, and we want to find out. So us four are available next Saturday. We know the game master said that they're available on Saturdays, so we want to do a foray into that dungeon and see if we can find it. So the expectation is that the players are giving the game master enough lead time to prepare a session's worth of material, and then that's the dialogue. That's the way that these sessions work. And of course, if you know the players are going to explore that whole dungeon, maybe you'll invest a little bit more time building out the whole thing. But maybe they'll go in and be like, this is too dangerous, and leave. So you don't want to overinvest unless you're really sure it's going to be worth it. And you just make what you need for the next session. All right, question. More Solo Dark material? Yeah, we will do that. We will make more videos. I don't know about written material, but definitely videos. I don't know if I could add much more to Solo Dark because besides what's in it to make it, I don't know if it needs anything else. It needs... at one point I was making it long. I was making it like this long book, and I realized that I was just recreating the generative tables that were already in Shadowdark core, and I was like, I don't need to do this. Like the core rules, it's designed to work with the core rules. Why am I trying to recreate the core rules? So, and I've talked to like Trevor Duvall, who has Me, Myself, and Die. That's a huge solo gameplay channel. He's doing so well. He released Broken Empires RPG, which is so cool. His first project ever, huge success. And, I had a very candid talk with him about his style of doing solo gaming, and he loves Mythic GME Emulator, which is it's a somewhat complex system. It's more complex than my tiny brain can handle, and I actually failed to use it properly and kind of bounced off of it. And that's just me. It's an excellent emulator. But he said by and large, the main things that he used were like the spark tables, like the prompt tables where you're pairing a verb and a noun, and then like rolling up NPCs and like town names and stuff. He's like 80% of what he does is pulled from those tables. And so that's why Solo Dark is that stuff, because it's like most of the time what you're going to use, and I just really wanted to cut to the quick on what was really needed most and then just keep it simple. Question: with the addition of so much content to the game, do you see yourself expanding support to various major VTTs? I don't know. Fantasy Grounds and they both start with an F, and then I get them messed up. The two ones that start with an F, we have broad general support for them, and we'll continue to do that. But VTTs they're actually kind of tough because they take a lot of work to get set up on, and then a lot of updating, and a lot of specialists need to be involved, and it's a difficult thing to stay fully on top of all the time. So I don't know if we're gonna move into other VTTs besides Fantasy Grounds and the other one. Forgive me. I'm sorry. I alphabetize things in my head. Maybe that's why my company's called the Arcane Library. I like remember the first letter of everything, and then all the rest of it is forgotten. Question, what was it like designing a city? Oh, it scrolled me to the bottom. Oh, Foundry. Oh, it scrolled me to the bottom. Tath was asking a question about a city, and I lost it. It's like 6 miles back. Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry, Tath. Ask it again, and I promise I'll answer. Question, do I get recognized in public, get fan mail, or get stopped for signatures? Oh, and I mean, not often. I had someone recognize me in a coffee shop once, and I like did not know what was happening. They were like, "Are you Kelsey Yon?" And I was like, "Have we met?" And it was crazy. And then that was wild. I was not expecting that. And then one time I called my bank to sort out a held transaction for something that we were doing. Like when you're wiring money to manufacturers and stuff, sometimes they get held for review. And the really kind person who helped me out knew who I was. And I was like, no way, this person knows my company. And he was like, can I just ask, is the Arcane Library is the company you have this bank account registered to? And I was like, yep. And he was like, oh, I watch your YouTube channel, which is just crazy. Oh yeah, it's wild. And I get such sweet fan mail. I just got, oh my gosh, the other day got the absolute sweetest fan mail. It's still on my desk. I feel weird even calling it fan mail. This doesn't happen often. This doesn't happen often at all, but I will occasionally get sent really, really lovely things. And like I had a young Shadowdark player send me the drawings of monsters that she made in sort of a recreation of what her most recent adventure foray was. And she wrote me this absolutely heart-stoppingly sweet note. And then her father, who is lovely, also wrote me a nice note too, and he had helped get this whole thing set up so that his daughter could send me this, and it was just the absolute most touching thing ever. I can't. It's giving me the vapors. Oh my God, it was so sweet. I'll keep it on my desk forever. And they sent me a really cute picture. Yeah, so that is always so kind of people. I don't even know what to say. It's so kind. Okay. Question. Oh, how many new monsters will we see stats for in the new material? It's still growing, actually, as I'm finishing things. It's still growing. Several. I do reprint, again, I reprint the monsters from the Curse Scroll zines because I want that to be an ease of referencing. Like, if you don't have Curse Scroll 5, but you're running the Isles of Andric, which are outlined in the hex crawl, like, you need to know the monster I'm referring to. So I'm going to be putting that material in the book, and then adding other monsters as needed, as they're called out or referenced in the other hex crawling material. That said, there aren't a bazillion new monsters in this because the hex crawl is really the focus on what's new. There are a couple new monsters mentioned throughout those hex crawls. But this isn't going to be like a massive bestiary. It's going to be what's needed for you to know the monsters to run that are mentioned in the hex crawl that aren't already in the core rules. Okay. So, let's see. Question. How do you avoid power creep while adding so many classes? Yeah, that's a good question. Power creep, I think it's easy for power creep and option expansion to sometimes be viewed as the same thing. Oh, and by the way, I don't think you're doing this. I just like to clarify this, that I think that as you add more options, you have to make sure that whatever you're adding is enriching a part of the game that has not yet been focused on. And balance is something that I fully acknowledge is not the full intention of these classes coexisting with each other. Like, I think that chasing balance is a thing of diminishing returns versus making the class fun within its chosen niche. So at least in Shadowdark's case, figuring out how to make a class the best at its own niche, whether that's something very specific or something more broad, is, in my opinion, the right way to go, because then somebody who chooses to play that class will, on average, always excel at their niche. And if they don't play that class, then that niche will not have as much direct support. And so you feel the presence and the lack of that class, depending on if it's there or not. And I pursue that mostly instead of making everybody balanced against each other. So, all right. I really like what Tuesday Night Games have done with Mothership. Yeah. Tuesday Night Games and Mothership and that whole team are just like absolute icons and people I look up to tremendously, and also the nicest people on the planet. Truly, like Sean McCoy helped me out so much when it was the last thing he needed to do when I was first getting Shadowdark off the ground, and continues to be one of the kindest and most supportive people ever, and sent me the nicest message about this Kickstarter. And so he's an example of somebody who does nothing but prop others up, and he deserves all of the success and continued success that he has, and it will be ever growing because Mothership is such a wonderful game and community and studio of developers. Question: would you consider creating a dedicated bestiary for Shadowdark with art for each monster? I don't rule it out at this point because I've said that I'm not going to do that, and then I ended up doing it, and I'm sure I've like made people kind of mad unintentionally because there are third-party developers who are also developing material, and I think about it. It does occur to me that I don't want to trample on what other people are doing, and so I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely making I Will Summon a Demon with my little nephew, and then maybe that'll be it for monsters for now, or maybe I'll get really excited and suddenly write like 100 of them and be like, oh, we've made a book. I don't rule it out. So, question: will an add-on option be added to the $1 pledge? Oh, okay. So I guess it turns out that it's like a platform limitation. So we're still figuring out how to do that. I'd love to hear from you guys if like a $1, there are like logistical issues that are behind the scenes with this. Like if I create a $1 tier, it must have a product keyed to it, which needs certain types of information about it on the back end, which will then push that product to be fulfilled by all of our fulfillment partners. And it just creates this like domino effect of chaos that I've hesitated to do it because we're trying to figure out logistically how to not accidentally create a ghost product that doesn't exist and then like have that impact shipping and have it impact like how our fulfillment partners like pick and pack these boxes. So I would love for Kickstarter to have the feature to enable add-ons for the $1 tier, but I haven't found a way to do that. I will revisit that to see if it's possible though. So thank you for asking that, Steve. I will absolutely revisit that. Question: will Western Reaches have more guidance for GMs with regard to when how Warlock patrons grant extra rolls? Yes, actually. Yes. They're the only class in the player's guide that has a separate section after it is the Warlock, which further clarifies first of all, it relists patrons because that is needed. It relists the patrons' talents that they grant. And it also gives very specific advice on how often at a minimum Warlock should be getting talents, because it's true that they were designed to receive talents more often than normal classes. And it needs to be enforced a bit more, I think. So I actually wrote a section on that in the book after the Warlock class explaining that. And it is on average at least once every level, by the way, that they should be getting a talent. And also clarifying the fact that Warlocks can juggle multiple patrons. So, I'm not saying it'd be easy. I think the Game Master should absolutely make that challenging for a Warlock, but there is nothing precluding them from having multiple patrons and being able to sort of pick and choose what they want and who they want to associate with or do things for. And if they can get away with it, then they can. So, all right. Have you ever thought of adding rune magic to the game? Kind of. The Seer from Curse Scroll 3 has elements of that. It wasn't like the focus of their spellcasting, but there are some spells that are meant to incorporate runes and things that sort of like are like keyed to their ability to be some of the best like augury type spellcasters. So I don't know. I think that we might even, if just talking about rune magic is talking about sort of a new spellcasting system, and so I haven't considered that yet because I think that spellcasting in Shadowdark is pretty flexible between all the different classes. So I haven't thought about that yet. Maybe we'll think about it. Question: which fulfillment companies do you recommend working for with delivering books to backers? You're moving to offset soon. Oh, that's really good to hear, Blackledge. That's really good. I'm so glad. I think that, people can find, offset can seem like an intimidating process, but it's not actually. Like, once you learn what you need to know about it, which is limited in scope, you need to know how to choose, you need to be able to make documents that can be sent to printers, which major layout softwares take care of for you. You need to learn a little bit about how colors print versus how they look on screens, So like when you're talking about print, you're talking about CMYK mixed colors, and then you're talking about blacks, which you need to learn, is it a better choice to do just straight black K for what I'm printing versus a blend of CMYK to make black. And like when you're talking about really small like line art and text, you always want to go with just black, 100% K. So like there are small things like that, but printers will teach you. You can learn online just by like doing some research, and then also like printers will teach you what you need to know. Good printers will answer your questions, and they will understand that they're the ones providing a specialized service to you, and that you might have things you need to learn from them. And so like getting stuff printed and then brought to where you need to fulfill it is the whole kind of process. And, if you're getting printed outside of the States, you want to work with a freight forwarding company, which some printers already get set up for you. So if you're going to ask a printer to make something, oftentimes they're prepared to also send it to you. A lot of them have that built in, and they'll incorporate that into their pricing. And you want to ask them to give it to you delivered duties paid, so DDP, which means that they're going to cover the cost of getting it to your destination, and then you pay them back for the cost of that. They get it through customs for you. So the freight, you either work with the freight forwarder that the printer has on board, or you find another freight forwarder whose job it is to do that for you. And we in the past have worked with ARC Global Logistics, who are great, and we've also worked with the shipping companies provided by the printers. And we've had excellent results both times. So I've never had a real problem with either. And then finally, the last step of that is having a company in the country of destination that will take your orders and then put the boxes together and mail them out. And the benefit of working with those companies is they can do a huge number of orders very quickly. They get better pricing from shippers, from like FedEx or USPS or whatever you're going to use, because they're doing bulk. So they have accounts that like let you take advantage of like corporate tier pricing. You get lower pricing. And we currently, I have to clear my throat here. We currently work with a company called Fulfill Right, and there are plenty of others out there. So they're great. There are lots of others. There's some that are on the West Coast. If you feel like you're going to be receiving freight to the West Coast more often, you might want to search there. If you live on the West Coast versus the East Coast, that could be a factor. Fulfill Right's on the East Coast, whereas I'm on the West Coast, and so that's something that at times has posed challenges. But I would definitely recommend working with a warehouse that's at a port of entry, whether in Florida or the East Coast or the West Coast, because your big boat's going to arrive near it, and you don't want to have to send truckloads of books all the way across the country. You want the boat to come in close to where you have your warehouse, and that's going to be more affordable. And that's really it. That's all the advice I can give you right now. And absolutely email me too, you guys, if you want more nuanced information. I'll stop there because I'm sure a lot of people they don't want to know this. But yeah, question: could you create a new tier only for the player's book? I'll consider that. I view them as a paired product, and so we have them as an add-on, like the individual books as an add-on. But a lot of this also comes down to the fact too that we have gotten quotes from our shipping partners that match certain weights and box sizes, and a lot of our costing is tied to those things. So it's very challenging to make tiers for like individual products and to not have that become unwieldy. And so a lot of stuff is I can't make a tier for everything, unfortunately, and like it also can become confusing for people. So we decided to like keep the products that are meant to go together as their own tiers, and then make every product available individually as an add-on. And I think that's kind of like the happy medium we have to strike between huge different numbers of tiers, very difficult and unpredictable shipping quote possibilities. It's like, yeah, we've had to make some compromises on that front so that we can wrap our heads around all of it and make sure we can truly fulfill things at the costs we're saying we can. So, has anyone created anything with the 2 missing gods of the 9? Probably, honestly. I would love to, I'm sure. I think, if someone has, mention it in the comments. If you're here and you've done that, say so, because that'd be cool to hear. Question, do you have a favorite method for running squad or large group combat? Yeah. If I have like a big group of goblins, I'll like 12 of them. I'll sometimes split it into 3 attack rolls and then of 4, and then if it then we'll have chunks of goblins miss and chunks of them hit. And that just makes it faster. You're rolling 3 attacks instead of 12. So, and generally speaking, the group of players is not going to be as large as the group of monsters. So I don't often run into... I wouldn't do that for players because each player wants to have their shot, So do it for monsters for sure. And actually, what's funny? I had the extreme honor of getting to write an article for the upcoming Goodman Games, like how I think it's called How to Write Adventures That Don't Suck Too. Which is kind of a funny title, but I actually wrote an entire essay for that book about efficiently running your games, and I mention a lot in there about that exact thing. And so I liked that. I liked that essay. I think it's got very actionable stuff in it, and I hope that people check it out. So, question: effect of tariffs on deliverability. We factored in the potentiality for tariffs, and so I'm not concerned about them. They are not unless somehow we're looking at like 100% tariffs by the end of the year, which seems unlikely. Just frankly, I don't think that's going to happen. We estimated the high end of what we thought tariffs might be in what we planned, and I don't see it in any way as insurmountable. I hope I'm not jinxing us by saying that, but I looked at the math, and the math looks okay, so it's not going to delay us. Question: a French translation has been announced for June, but will the new supplement be translated or just the core book? Well, any partners that we work with for localization, which we're actually working on that with a ton of other partners, it's been sort of a background task. The Kickstarter had to take precedence recently, but when we decide to work with a partner, our intention is that all of our material will be available to them as they can handle it. And so I'm hoping that if things go well for the French translation team and they find that it was a successful venture on their part, that they'll want to do more. And it's the same true for our team in Brazil, who I think currently has a crowdfunding campaign still active for a few more weeks about getting Shadowdark into print in Brazil, which is super, super exciting. I'm so happy that we get to do that. And let me see. Oh, my stomach just growled. Did y'all hear that? We'll probably go for at least another 10 or 15 minutes because it seems we still have a fair number of viewers and we still have questions coming, and I'm not fainting from hunger yet, so we can totally do this. All right. Question: what are your thoughts on storytelling campaigns versus sandbox campaigns, and what are the benefits with them? I'm a huge advocate of sandbox campaigns. I think storytelling campaigns, like every campaign has a story, regardless of the style with which you choose, regardless of the style with which you approach the campaign. A story will emerge from anything, Every session is ultimately a contiguous story continuing on from the past session, right? So I find a lot more joy in running games that are driven by the players, where I'm not presenting like a world quest. I'm giving lots of hooks and interesting things that I want the players to feel compelled on their own to pursue. And I feel like I've actually gone awry at times trying to insert planned story beats into campaigns that were otherwise sandboxes. Like the times that I know that I have learned DMing lessons from mistakes were when I tried to do things like that. And so as the years have gone on, I've simply become more and more of an advocate for the player-driven, like mission-oriented style of gameplay where the players tell you what they want to do and you make those things possible, you know? And it's not to say that there's anything wrong with the campaign style story. I mean, obviously that's a popular style for a reason. Even more so since like the second edition sort of pivot more towards the Dragonlance fueled epic campaign stuff. Like, like if you want to throw the ring into Mount Doom, that's a perfectly fine storyline to pursue in a D&D game. Nothing wrong with it. It's just everybody has their preference of what they like, and I like the stuff I like, I guess, you know. All right, question. My level 4 thief has been the sole survivor of 2 near TPKs. Wow, Chubby, that's amazing. How many more times can I do this before they get suspicious? At least twice more. At least twice more. And then after that, they're going to execute you. So just be careful. Oh yeah, Hell March by Alchemic Raker is an excellent mass combat thing. Yeah. Oh, I thought that was so cool when I saw that. So Alchemic Raker is somebody who's really done a deep dive into like the early source material for D&D, like the early war games like Chainmail, and has really done a deep examination of what makes that system tick and how it impacted later versions of D&D. And he wrote a mass combat system for Shadowdark and EZD6 that's informed by that research. And I think, like, could you ask for a more appropriate person to write such a thing? So Hellmarch is absolutely worth checking out. I have it, and I'm like going through it as time permits, and I've been very, very impressed by how well considered it is. Question: how strictly do I stick to always on initiative outside of combat? Not like super strictly. Like I think that system is there for when it's needed, you know. And like on that same page, there's like a more freeform style form of initiative offered, and I really use a blend of both pretty regularly. I especially with smaller groups, I think it's much more comfortable to use a more freeform style because you're not really going to have players accidentally trampling on each other, or with your home game, you know your players well enough to be able to sort of nudge things in the right direction. Like if you know you have one player that's always kind of like hogging the limelight, so to speak, when you know your players, it's easier to feel things out. I tend to use more strict always on initiative like at conventions and stuff when I don't know the players super well and we're dealing with larger groups of players. So it's very much like seasoned to taste. I think a lot of people believe that Shadowdark is meant to be strictly played only in initiative order, and it's not. It's meant to be done so if you need to. But if you can track rounds without staying that strict, and if each player is getting to, generally speaking, take an action before you as the GM respond to those actions, then you don't need super strict initiative. Then you don't need it. So, all right. What's the best advice for monster design? Make it super weird. That's what I would do. Like, make it something that the players, make the monster itself a puzzle, the way that like a basilisk is a puzzle. A basilisk can just paralyze you and boom, that's it. So how do you deal with that? Like, what can you do to overcome a basilisk besides lower its hit points to 0? Those are my favorite kinds of monsters. So that's I'd love to see more of those in the world. Not really a question, but just want to say I saw what you're doing with the Lost and had a fun time taking full advantage of it. Good. I'm glad. Yeah, I don't want to over-define them ever because those are toys for the game master. Question: will there be any rules for higher level characters to do something other than carouse, like build strongholds, research magic spells? Partially, yes. There's going to be a huge expansion to downtime stuff in Curse Scroll 6. I showed a preview of some learning downtime options on the Kickstarter page. There's a preview page of some of the more codified like learning downtime. And so that has stuff in it like how wizards can make potions or find scrolls or make wands. It has stuff like how You know, that's limited to wizards, but like there's other stuff like skullduggery, which really any character can undertake. Like, yes, it's aimed at thieves, but any kind of charismatic or dexterous character can undertake the actions in that section, which include things like committing crimes, like burglary, trying to attack the reputation of other people or boost your own reputation, stuff like that. So there's that. And then of course there's like I'm doing a huge expansion to carousing because I know that in the core rules, like, yes, there are 14-ish entries and like results. And so I'm writing very, very expanded tables with carousing results and a slightly more robust system to make it just, you know, just like a lot more rich, like a lot more different options, a lot more different possible results. So a little bit of both and a lot of both will be coming out. So I haven't heard of tariffs being applied to books. So far correct. So far I have not, you know, and I'm staying in close contact with our printer every day about this, but we are constantly checking in on this. And so far there's been a tariff kind of freeze or moratorium on books. There's been no raised tariffs on books thus far into the United States. Question, referees are supposed to tweak rules to adjust their immediate needs. Yeah. What rules in Shadowdark do I most frequently omit or modify for my home games? Thanks. Yes. Okay. So one thing that I only use rarely is when, and maybe this will be viewed as blasphemy, the rule exists that when you pass time, like 10 minutes of time, you make a random encounter check with a higher possibility of a random encounter. I will sometimes lower the possibility. I will still make the check, but I'll sometimes keep it in a 1 in 6 instead of the 3 in 6 that's recommended. You know, if I feel that suits the situation. The reason it's 3 in 6 is so that people can't abuse this to like pass huge stretches of time and avoid random encounters. But if I don't feel the players are attempting to abuse that, and I feel that a random encounter is not necessarily more likely or more warranted in this situation, then I'll usually roll it as a 1 in 6 chance instead. And you just have to feel that out, honestly. Feel free to apply the rules at full pressure if your players are abusing the passage of time rules to attempts to skip random encounters. All right. Question, with new learning rules, if you upgrade the damage of a weapon, how does it affect different weapons? Does a D8, D10 versatile become a D10, D12? Yeah, oh, good question. Yep, it would raise the damage die for all forms of the weapon's use. And obsidian weapons do. So with an obsidian weapon, the base weapon would go up. So therefore, yeah, I think the obsidian weapon would go up in damage die as well. It's harder to find obsidian weapons. That's absolutely for sure. Bolas don't have a damage die. They have a flat damage. And so strangely, that one, actually I would not suggest improving the bolas unless you want to, unless you feel that it's very important to the character. Any weapons that have a set damage of like 1, which I believe is like bolas, blowgun, there's a couple, you should change that if your players really want their blowgun to deal a d4 damage, but I did not, because they don't deal a die of damage, there is in theory not a climb available to them. But, you know, is your player really geeked about having their blowgun deal a d4? Then do it. You know, it's not gonna really hurt anything. In my world, the Lost are the only actual gods, and the rest are. You'll have to find out. Haha. 006. I keep mispronouncing your name. I keep calling you Zerovi, but it's 06. You've corrected me before, and I am so bad. Okay. Love the rules. Love the preview of the new downtime rules. Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. Thank you. Question. Shadowdark's on Long Island or New York? Well, there are lots of game stores out there. If I'm ever out that way, I would be thrilled to run some stuff. And definitely, I would love to build up support for local game stores to run events at their stores out there, as well as everywhere. So, Kelsey and Emirates, thank you for the nice sticker pack that you just. Oh, thanks, Robert. Yeah, we wanted to send you a fun little thing. Yeah, I'm glad you got that. I'm glad I made it. Greetings from Brazil. Hi, Brazil. I'm so glad that you are all here along with us. Question: will be going to Nova Open in DC? I don't have plans for that one. That one wasn't on my radar yet. I try to do as many cons as I can each year without exhausting myself, which is usually like on average like one a month. July I'm going to like 3. So I'm frail and tiny. I can only do a few. I'm getting old. A formal implementation of DCC style martial maneuvers for Shadowdark. Yeah, it's it's never been a formalized thing in Shadowdark. Like it's sort of the Principia Apocrypha thing where it's like if your player wants to like swing off a chandelier and land on somebody, the rules support improvising that. Oftentimes it comes down to a mixture of advantage and or movement related impact. Like I want to knock this guy on his back. Okay, that's gonna make it so he can't move next turn. So I think that the output possibilities on those maneuvers are tend to strictly fall within about 3 to 4 outcomes. And so there have been times where I felt it wasn't necessary to codify them for that reason. But perhaps we could give examples and maybe add a bit more in there. Question: do I use third-party adventure content? Yeah. Like I think some of the stuff written from the third party is really awesome. It's really, really cool. And as much as I can, I like to use it. I often find myself having to like play test my own material, and when I get the chance to play, I'm often trying to run some stuff I'm working on through its paces. But I find so much of the third party material to be delightful, and I will often get it and then be like, oh, I know exactly where I'm going to place this in my game world if my players come upon it, so that's a thing. Question: do vampires deal permanent con loss? Yes. So this is something we've actually clarified in the rules as a result of testing and play testing and all that too. When something deals damage to a stat, that is something that heals as normal healing does, whether you're using the full healing rules or you're using the grinder mode, which is more reflective of like old school style gameplay, like healing incrementally over time, which by the way I recommend that you do use if you're running a West Marches style game. Damage will heal. Loss does not heal. Loss is permanent, and I will actually usually state in the effect that this is a permanent loss. Whereas if I don't state that it's permanent, I would assume that it's not. But in any case, damage is the kind of stuff that heals. Hit points damage heals. Hit points loss does not heal. Stat damage heals. Stat loss does not heal. So hopefully that kind of helps. Question: how do you help players who have fallen unconscious stay engaged when they effectively cannot take turns during a session? If the player is unconscious, I might call an ambulance. I'm just being silly. I'm just being silly. I do this all the time too. I do this all the time. I know you meant character, and I would never fault somebody for not saying the right word anyway. I'm just being silly. For someone who's unconscious in the game, I would sometimes let them run monsters. I think that it is true that being knocked unconscious is kind of a penalty. And it's not fun to be unconscious, but it is usually brief. It's usually like for the duration of what is already a short combat, like combats in Shadowdark on average last 3 rounds. So it's brief, and there will either be resting done or healing applied pretty quickly. And like, I don't want it to feel overly punitive, but it is punitive to be knocked unconscious. So like, yeah, like you have to sit a couple turns out because your character had something bad happen to them. And I think that part of the design goals of Shadowdark were to make combat fast enough that things like that are really not as devastating as they would be, surprisingly not as devastating as they would be if you're playing like 4th edition where combat can last 3 actual game sessions, So, but let them run monsters. That's fun. That's a fun one to do. Question. AI versus, I thought it said L. No, it says AI. AI can be super helpful for ideation, but I feel like it's a slippery slope. Would love to hear your thoughts. I mean, I don't use AI in the stuff that I do. I don't even use it for like pulling lists up. I don't even know how to access it, honestly. I think I would have like, I don't, but I mean, I do it because I don't use it because I just have never needed or used it. And if people are using it to like generate ideas for themselves, like you said, it's a slippery slope, and I neither encourage nor discourage it. I think everybody has to make their own decision on what they're going to use AI for. I don't necessarily say like you should have it writing stuff for you, or like definitely like making art for you. Like, I mean, why do that? Creating things is a joy, you know? Like, why would you? I would feel very dissatisfied if something else was making things for me. Making things is part of what I love to do, and I wouldn't want that taken away, you know? So I think that if you enjoy the process, you have to embrace it. It will be kind of challenging sometimes too. You'll get stuck. But that's what's delightful about making things. So I would encourage everyone to default to making their own stuff. That's it. When are you opening the Arcane Cafe coffee and game rooms? Oh my gosh, I know, right? If I had all the time in the world, I think it'd be so fun to have like cause I really like, I'm sort of like an espresso fanatic, and I mean, it would be so cool one day to be like, whoa, we have like an espresso shop and a game store combined, but logistically the difficulty of making that would be like unparalleled, and I don't know if the life I live could positively survive such a challenging undertaking. Question, how does near far system work with mapping a dungeon? Is a system more theater of the mind or tactical grid? Like, it's kind of both. Like, I think you do need to kind of map. Like, a lot of people want to have at least a loose map of the dungeon, but what theater of the mind has always existed and always been supported with every style of play. I think it's easy in Shadowdark because distances are like more abstracted if you want them to be. I think having a loose drawing of the dungeon is helpful because I'm a visual person, and I know a lot of people are, where I want to see a representation of what we're doing. But abstracted distances are an attempt to make that less punishing. Like, you don't have to note exactly how long the hallway is. You could just say the hallway is roughly this long, and not, you know, sweat blood trying to make sure. Like, there are some examples in early dungeoneering where people, like, the design and the gameplay would get lost in the weeds on the minutia of distances. And, you know, like, there's a very famous section of Caverns of Thracia where there's like a gradual degree incline on a hallway that it's like its only purpose is to kind of try to mess with the mapper. And like, Janelle was attempting to engage with all angles of gameplay when she was writing this, and I applaud that. But I think in execution, it's just juice. It's not worth the squeeze. And so I don't think precise measurement adds something to gameplay that makes the game significantly more fun to play. All right. Any thoughts on the overlap in more new classes and titles? Titles can overlap for sure, you know, because like titles are a flavor thing, and people should feel free to change titles. Like, I offer titles that are sort of generically suited toward the world that I'm designing this thing for, but they have no strict gameplay effect, and titles are something purely for players to enjoy achieving. Because like, as your title gets cooler sounding, it's cool, you know, like, but you know, feel free to change them. Feel free to if any are overlapping in a way that you don't like just switch it up or modify them. And the purpose of titles is not to have the purpose of titles isn't the distinctiveness of the title. The purpose of the title is for it to be cool. So just make it cool. Question, when playing, do you rather cover the map with a cloth? You know, when I'm running convention games, I actually show the whole map. Because I kind of want the players to have an understanding of the scope of like what you can do during this session. I find that like revealing as you go, again, is a thing that is like sort of a diminishing return situation in a campaign or in a game that's like at a convention. It's just more fun. It's just more fun to like see a big map in front of you, I think, and look at it and think of all the possibilities. So, but in my home games, I will more incrementally reveal stuff, often because we're playing online. You know, like I more frequently play online than I do in person. And so it's easier because you have like fog of war tools and stuff. And so it's so much easier that it can actually, it's not cumbersome to hide and reveal. And so it is, the barrier to do so is so low that it tends to be worth it. But yeah, that's, that depends on the audience and the purpose. I really like showing the whole map. It gives people something fun to look at. It's, you know, I'd rather have players like staring at the map being like, I wonder what all this is, than feeling like tempted to look at their phone or something. So, okay. So how do you handle torches and lights? Yeah, I mean, I love the torch timer. I think it's easy. I tend to keep it hidden from the players, and I'll randomly add a bit of time or take away a bit of time from it if I feel they might be trying to monitor it in a sort of unnatural way. But when people like if my players ask me like, how's our torch looking, I will give them a pretty honest answer. It's not about like hiding it from them. If they're smart enough to ask, I'm going to be like, yeah, it looks like it's about 3/4 of the way burned down. Stuff like that. So, you know, it's real-time torches are truly not for every group. Like some groups just don't like it. They want to track concrete movement of time, but I find tracking real time for torches to be both very freeing and very exciting. And so if that's what you get out of it, then you should use it. If you don't get that out of it, just treat every torch as lasting for 10 rounds, you know, and that might be a good fix. And, not all methods work for all groups. So you got to have options. Question. Marvolo is mentioned in a few tables in the core book, and I understand that Marvolo is the name of a character of yours. Yes. A lot of characters I once had are named in the books sort of like without, you know, apropos of nothing. Like I will use that character's name. Marvolo was a character that I played, and so is Brack. So there isn't a ton more of that in the Western Reaches. But sometimes I'll put in real people as well, like references to real people, and there is some of that in the Western Reaches. And so they're just like odes to those people. It's not an attempt to depict them accurately in the game. It's just a name. It's just naming them. Naming a character NPC after them in a sort of funny way. So, question, thought on TTRPG with no spells in the game book, but the spells by the players trying to make system for letting them make their own spells. Oh, yeah. So making your own spells, that's a nut people have tried to crack to varying degrees of success, and I think it's very cool and admirable. I loved is the epic level handbook for 3rd edition, where you could make like epic level spells off this like a la carte menu. You'd be like calculating out the final way to cast a spell. It's all, you know, I loved that. But in Shadowdark, it's not something I've thought to do yet, and I'm not sure if I would. I'd have to think on that. I think it does add a great deal of complexity. It's very fiddly. So it's a bit against the core ethos of the game, but it doesn't mean it would be totally out. I just haven't thought about it much, honestly. Question. Oh, I got scrolled to the bottom again. I really hope I don't miss anybody. Let's do 15 more minutes. That'll give us a solid 2 hours of talking, and I think we have still a very healthy number of viewers according to this what I'm seeing, and so I very appreciate everybody being here. Question. It did scroll me to the bottom, so I'm just going to try to leap back a bit and see if I can catch things. I'm so sorry if I miss people. Question. Really love your 5e adventures. Will you make some more someday? Or some kind of conversion guide for your Shadowdark stuff to 5e. Yeah, you know, I think that my era of writing for 5e has concluded. And, you know, with no malice or anything, I just think like the OGL was a chapter end for me on my 5e writing, and also the advent of Shadowdark. Like I want to focus my creative attention on making new material for Shadowdark, and I've been asked occasionally about if I would convert my 5th edition material into Shadowdark, and I could do that, but the challenge is that when you design something for a system, I think if you're making your best effort, you're designing the material to best work with that system, and what best works for 5th edition is not what best works for Shadowdark. And so it would be creating a sort of unrealistic product if I were to try to push those from the 5e space into the Shadowdark space. So to convert the 5e adventures I have, in almost all cases, I've made a monster that's comparable that you could just pull from the core rules and use in those adventures. And so if you're otherwise going along and just replacing monsters and then adapting DCs to fit the Shadowdark standards, you could run those adventures. But know that they'll be maybe a little bit less exploration driven by and large than like a standard Shadowdark site-based adventure. And if that's okay, then, you know, if you go into it knowing that, and then you're prepared. So, all right. How many players have used a light spell on torches? How many players have used a light spell on torches and or lanterns? Oh, like casting it on the torch. I don't see that often. I think they prefer to cast it on something that's easier that doesn't take up a hand. Like I'll get people casting it on shields or like helms and stuff. One thing I want to note about this, I was expecting more people to be like, oh my god, you created a permanent spell, which I think is in the spell previews. If it's not, then just so you all know, a tier 5 spell for lawful wizards is permanence, which can make a spell affecting an object it last for 1 year. And it's so funny. My wife Jessie doesn't play D&D, but she's somehow like she immediately knows the first question everyone's gonna ask, and she's like, well, what if someone does that on a light spell? And I was like, oh, no, but I had thought of that, thankfully. But that is obviously one of the most potent things that you could do to break the core ethos of the game. But dark mantles, okay? There are dark mantles. Also, objects that have light permanently cast on them, the game master should attack the light. Like, steal the object, destroy the object. The monsters hate the object. So in such an edge case, also you have to destroy a diamond worth like 500 gold to cast the spell, which has a very natural inborn limit. So just so you know, dark mantles permanently extinguish magical light. So I almost relish the idea of a group of adventurers like going into a dungeon with their like 1 or 2 magic torches, and then just some like stinky old dark mantles float down and destroy them. So just so you all know, don't forget about dark mantles. Let's see. What else? What is the... Yeah, the Arcane Library is an LC set up in Nevada. Yeah. Yeah, like I live in Nevada, so that's why I have it set up here. But where else I live is... No one needs to really know much about that. Somewhere near Las Vegas. There are only a few cities in this blasted wasteland desert that I live in. Dispel magic on permanence. Ooh, I have to reread the wording for dispel magic. I'm glad I write things down when I design them, because otherwise I forget what they say. So I'm assuming dispel magic would permanently extinguish. Because if I recall, it just ends the spell. Agile Monk is actioning. Will I manufacture in the USA? Absolutely, as soon as there's a manufacturer who can do offset printing like we need. We've vetted dozens of printers in the US, and none of them can do the things that we need for offset printing. Yeah, offset printing is very, very much a no longer US-based industry, as many have become. And so I would love to save money on shipping, on tariffs. I like the idea. I mean, I live in the United States of America, and I love supporting the economy of the country in which I live. I think that's a natural instinct for most people. So, if somebody knows of an offset printer who can do things that we need, please tell me. Question, will hammers be in the Western reaches? No more than they are currently. They exist at the same level at which they exist in Shadowdark Core, which is mostly as a meme. Question, do you have any ideas for spells you really want to design but haven't cracked yet? Oh, they come up over time. I mean, I really like sword and sorcery fiction, and the stuff that the proverbial sorcerers do in those stories is sometimes just wild and totally, you know, isn't strongly represented in the whirl of Shadowdark spells. And so I always go back to fiction for inspiration, you know, sort of classic Appendix N behavior. I have a stack of sword and sorcery novels that I bought to read through for fun, and I'm sure by the end of it I will have found inspiration for spells that would be fun to make. So, you know, stay tuned on that front. Question, are the Azarumians, the new cursed scroll type, different than the society in Crypts of Azarum? No, they are the same. They are the same. This Cursed Scroll 4 in particular explains a bit about the origins of what became a wide-reaching cult, and a bit about, in fact, almost very, very nearly explicitly explains the origin of vampires in the game world. And there are some references made to some named figures who had large impacts on the history of the Western Reaches. But again, I don't like lore dumping, so I hint at these things, and for people who want to use it, they may. For people who want to replace it with their own version of something I mentioned, like the Dark Queen, I supply an NPC that could do that, but by no means does it have to be her. You can put your own in. Awesome. Question. When you write... if we want to publish our own Shadowdark content, do we have to publish using the exact same templates and fonts like in your books? No, you don't. In fact, it's probably better if you don't, because I mean, having some visual tie-ins to Shadowdark as a game can help signal to people, you know, like what you're writing for, but also like we have a for use with Shadowdark or design for use with Shadowdark RPG logo that you may use. You don't have to use it, but I actually tell people that trying to develop your own visual look to your material is going to help you stand out over time. And I think that it's actually beneficial to make your material look unique, because then people know it's from you. And if they like your work, they're going to seek that out more. And, you know, there's a certain, it's complicated too, because there's a certain amount where if something gets too close to looking like an official Shadowdark product, that can create problems for me and people. And so, you know, like, I think that we try to be lenient and encouraging with, you know, like, if you want to make something that has visual ties to the Shadowdark look, like, I totally get that, but just don't try to make it look like one of my books, because if you're confusing customers into thinking that I wrote something, that's when we cross over into the territory of it being a problem. And so that's just my best advice on that front. Any chance of a print on demand? I feel like the possibility of that continues to become less likely, because print on demand costs are going up so much that the inherent benefit to that is kind of starting to disappear. And I'm also I'm kind of a stickler for quality being a very intrinsic part of the experience. And to me, it's very important to have a book that has good, strong binding, good paper, good durability. It's not going to accidentally pop off the spine because the glue got tired one day. And I just think that having a high quality book to the degree that it's possible is just a very important part of the experience. And it's hard for me to bend on that. I have high standards. Question, have I ever played Vampire the Masquerade? Oh, thanks for asking, Black Lodge. Yeah, when I was in high school, dude, when I was one of the goth kids, my friend Levi would come to school wearing like a full trench coat and a top hat, and we had some Vampire the Masquerade hijinks. I didn't get to play it much, but actually, strangely enough, one of my friends, co-workers, and mentors is this lovely gentleman named Chris Walters, who wrote the official Ravnos supplement, I think. I could be wrong. Now I forget which house, but he wrote official material for Vampire. And so we would talk about it a lot. He worked at the game store I worked at in high school. Like we would have shifts together, and he ran a ton of games for me. He was a dear friend, and he and his wife, we were actually somewhat close in age. They're about 10 years, maybe less, 10 years-ish older than me, and it was really fun to hang out with them and do different gaming stuff. I would love to play Vampire again. In fact, I was going to ask BLG, you got to run a game for me of it sometime, because I miss all of the... We gotta... By the way, there's a lot of people who LARPed Vampire in my hometown too, and like it kind of became a bit of a inside joke that people would try to maybe it was Ravnos. I don't know if it was Ravnos. I have to check now. I'm gonna check. I'm speaking from total lack of knowledge, but I'll see which one he wrote. But yeah, there would be kids like popping out of like parking lots like at night, where like in trench coats, like trying to like doing the hand signal for obfuscate, and it was I mean, I thought it was entertaining to watch, and I never did it myself. And like, I don't know, I think I've done LARPing to a small degree, but I'm more of a table person. Was it Bruja that he wrote? Chris Walters, we'll find it. Oh yeah, Keely, you do Vampire as well? Black Lodges, you're gonna run it at North Texas. I mean, I'm gonna be there. That'd be so fun. I think I forgot to submit events, and Mike's gonna kill me. I have to fix that because we were so busy. Like, for some reason, we got so busy with the Kickstarter. Every time North Texas event submission is coming around, I'm in the midst of some massive thing I'm working on, and I forget to submit events, and like I have to beg him to please let me submit a couple, because like it's unbelievably uncool to like show up as a guest and like not run any events. So I will fix that. But I would love to play in games there too, and meet the people who are attending, because I know there's a really strong OSR contingent, and cool people that go. But one of the most fun cons, truly. That's the con where I got to meet Janelle, and it was very shortly before her health stuff kicked in, and so I'm grateful every day that I got to go to that con and meet her, and it was very special. Okay. Question: when making dungeon hex crawl maps, do you hand draw the maps yourself? Yes. But I don't do the final versions myself for hex maps. I still do dungeon maps myself, possibly to deserved ridicule, because I'm not the best. I'm really not like the best artist. Like here's one on my desk. Like I just drew this map the other day for a mini dungeon we're working on. And this is its working title. It isn't quite called this, but like it's not. I mean, I want them to be simple and legible. And I think that the black and white with simple presentation is really important. And if I don't do the hex maps, Cameron Moss draws them, and he's an amazing visual cartographer who I hand off like digital files or pencil maps to, and he makes them look real. But I still do my own dungeon stuff for now, until it goes beyond my capability. All right. It's 2:00 and we still have a couple more questions. I don't want to just disappear on everybody with their questions. Let's do a few more. Any thoughts of a milestone-based XP system? You can do that. I think that XP for treasure is sort of a tried and true method for getting characters and players rather inspired to go looking for things. But you have to decide what you want to motivate your players to do. Like, depending on the kind of game you're running, if milestone, I think the only thing that I feel is important is if the characters feel like they have agency in pursuing that experience. So like, I think you have to be clear with them that I'm doing milestone leveling. You will achieve the next milestone when XYZ happens. I think you kind of owe it to the players to give them a target. Otherwise, they're just kind of wandering around till you say so. And the reason that is, in my opinion, less impactful is because it removes experience as a motivator for action. And so that's just something to bear in mind. That as long as you're maintaining motivation for action and giving the players agency in achieving the experience that you say you will give them, then I think how you do it is flexible. So, question. Have you ever thought of putting a Shadowdark touch on the tabletop wargaming hobby? I haven't. I don't know if I would be qualified to do it. The most I've done is like some probably poorly played sessions of 40K in my youth. I mean, I loved playing 40K. I actually played quite a lot of it. But, you know, I think 40K is fun in theory, but then I always feel like when you're playing that it's just a lot of you feeling like very disappointed at how things go. And maybe it's because I'm bad at playing it. I don't know. I played Eldar back when they were terrible. And, I mean, we had fun, but there's a lot of like relishing your opponent's bad luck and then like truly lamenting your own that felt a little bit like, I felt a little bit like you'd spend 5 hours doing something that you often regretted. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know enough about wargaming to be considered a useful person to ask, I guess. Don't believe what I say. I don't know anything about wargaming. I'm sure it's way more fun than my poor understanding of it probably captures. Including the current Kickstarter, what is one thing you'd love to add to Shadowdark mechanics that you probably can't do? I think that I have at times tested and tried to incorporate mini games into Shadowdark that I felt were not ultimately matching the simplicity of the gameplay style. Here's the thing, like I think that anybody who develops game systems enjoys tinkering and enjoys seeing how much complexity they can add and remove. And you know, sometimes you go too far in one direction or the other, and it takes a lot of messing around to try to capture what you were really going for while making it usable or not. And so, but I'll tell you one thing. I love video games, but only a few of them. Like I'm not what I would consider like an avid video game aficionado. I don't even have like new systems. I don't even know. For example, I've never played Skyrim. I've never played. I stopped at N64. Like that's where my advancements stopped, and then I got a Switch later because I like games that are in the Nintendo franchise. Like Legend of Zelda is my fave. Where I'm going with this is, I forgot where I was going with this. No, where I was going with this is I only like Zelda games. Unfortunately, I love Pokemon games and always have, and I really like Stardew Valley, which is a farm sim, and I have actually seriously started futzing around with like farm sim style downtime rules for Shadowdark. I'm sure that will go absolutely nowhere, but it's fueled by my love of Stardew Valley, and who knows, maybe I'll have a breakthrough. Oh, my dog's here. She wants me to scratch her head. Hi, Matilda. So wouldn't that be funny if we released like the Shadowdark Valley, or like, you know, honestly, like I can't believe I'm even speaking seriously about this, but it seems to me that it would need to be focused around like obviously like slice of life, like farm survival, but also probably castle or stronghold development, because that's such a D&D related trope, and also something the characters probably would need. So I can't believe I even seriously consider it, but I do. Okay. So, and I know, yes, there's an Ironsworn hat called Iron Valley. I actually know of it. It's but it's like Ironsworn style, like powered by the apocalypse, and I'm a little bit like I'm too like D&D oriented to be able to leverage the powered by the apocalypse method of having stated moves. Like it's very elegant, and it's definitely well suited for the people who prefer that gameplay style. Like it's so cool. I'm too like, the way that I've played games my whole life is too locked in for me to fully absorb that. Kelsey, who is my starter Pokemon? Oh, what a question. So I have to, okay, here's an admission. I wanted to choose Charmander, but I had Nintendo Power Magazine tell me that you would be better off choosing either Bulbasaur or Squirtle. So I really thought about that. I really like the color green, so I went with Bulbasaur. And you know what? I came to love Bulbasaur. I came to truly view Bulbasaur as the choice that my heart would have chosen. You know, I was like a 5th grader or 4th grader who liked dragons, so Charmander did have appeal, but there's something about Bulbasaur that I think the universe led me to that made that the right answer for me. And to this day, I view Bulbasaur as my true starter, even though my heart wavered, like Harry's did, between Gryffindor and Slytherin. You know? So Bulbasaur. What was it? What was all your starter Pokemon? What was all yours? My wife started playing during, not Pokemon Red or Blue, during Pokemon Yellow, which came slightly later, and so her starter Pokemon was Pikachu. And I can't really fault her because that's still old school enough to be legit, in my opinion. One of the original 151? All right. Question, if you had to pick one book, movie, or game to add to Appendix N, what would it be? Ooh, okay. I would add Sabriel by Garth Nix. Garth Nix is a modern fantasy writer who very much understands the sword and sorcery genre and draws from it. Sabriel is actually, I wouldn't say necessarily a sword and sorcery game, but it's definitely like a grim fantasy, but very like human focused. He developed a very interesting spellcasting system in that story, like before this was a common thing. And so that I would add. And also he writes like short stories that are so delightfully like sword and sorcery-esque, like the entire series of short stories about Sir Hereward and Mr. Fitz. Delightful and hilarious. He has an extremely like a very funny sense of humor that is a little bit like Fritz Lieber style, in my opinion, like very, very delightful stories to read. So I would add the stories of Sir Hereward and Mr. Fitz and Sabriel to the original Appendix N. And the Wizard of Earthsea series was like not included in Appendix N because they were basically coming out concurrently. But like Tombs of Etuan is like the pinnacle of dungeon fiction, and it just makes me believe in convergent design being true, because that book came out like I think the same year that D&D's Brown Box published, and like it literally reads like a D&D game. And so I really do think that concepts bubble up in the public creative space sort of sometimes concurrently. Question, how has your approach to class balance evolved since the Core 4? I'm really excited to introduce more classes, but have enjoyed the smaller scope. I'll always love the Core 4, and I personally really enjoy running games with just them. I really do, because I think they capture the classic dungeon crawling vibe so magnificently. Like, well, I mean, I'm not saying like I made a magnificent. It's like obviously it's the restatements of the basic classes from early D&D, but I think that they're the game was built around them, and so it's hard to overstate their impact on the experience of D&D, and I really enjoy having the game be focused on those 4. And of course, players love different options. I love designing classes that are key to the game world. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a bunch of options available or just the Core 4, but it comes down to preference. And I think it's better to provide the opportunity to people to choose what they want to do rather than withhold it. So that's why I make classes, but I tend to run with Core 4. Yeah. Oh yeah, Ursula K. Le Guin. She's a well-known and loved author, the author of the Earthsea. The first 2 Earthsea books are my absolute delight. The third one is also very great. It's very good, and there are later ones in the series too that are good. They're great, but the third one, I believe, if I recall, I forget what happens in that one. I think that one is it starts to sort of become more of an examination of like the experience of being a powerful wizard and what it's like to have that become like your identity, and for it to suddenly become something you don't necessarily have anymore. So it becomes more of like a mature examination of like human life, whereas the first 2 are a little bit more of a like more fantasy driven like quest style story, and absolutely more lighthearted. So the first 2 for sure, the 3 stand as a series, but they each book stands on their own, and the first 2 are strongly recommended, and the third one if you want to explore themes that are a little bit more soul-wrenching. Okay. Let's see. Let's do maybe like 5 or 10 more minutes, and then I'm gonna not torture everybody with my self-indulgent chattering longer than that. Hey, oh, thank you. No questions, just congrats. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, I'm still shocked. It, like, I part of me was like, this Kickstarter is going to be a public vote on whether they want Shadowdark to stick around or whether we're a one-hit wonder, and of course I thought about those things, and I thought, like, if this Kickstarter really underfunds, then I think that is something to take note of. But I almost didn't want to think about the possibility of it overfunding to the degree that it has, like, done so well, because it was the thing I don't want to get my hopes up too high and, like, be like, oh, the entire future of my career writing for this game is going to be somewhat suggested by the course of this Kickstarter. So the fact that it has done so well has been deeply, deeply vindicating, and very much reassuring that there is indeed an audience for people who want more Shadowdark, and that it's actually growing, and that I have a lot more I get to do now, which makes me really happy. And someone's signing off. Have a good rest of your day. Yeah, and so, of course, like, you don't want to think that the work that you poured yourself into was merely a one-hit wonder, but you have to face the possibility that it was. And so I actually think publishing this Kickstarter was much more nerve-wracking than the last one for that reason, because there's something you're trying to live up to. And so, I just am very grateful. I'm just beyond grateful that things have gone farther than my deepest expectations. So you guys, thank you so much for pledging and for showing your continued excitement and support for this game, and giving me something to work toward. And I can't wait. I love this so much, and to think that other people love it that much too is just astounding. So that feels like a really excellent place for us to end our AMA, with just, my absolutely awed gratitude at the Shadowdark community. And I'm super geeked for the stuff we have coming up this month. We have a community calendar that we've been updating in the community section of the Shadowdark, and that's where we're posting stuff like our live streams for design, and just like GaryCon related information, and that's where we'll be in a few days. I'm flying out in 2 days for that, so that will be exciting, and I hope to see everyone who's able to attend there. It's going to be crazy and fun, and we're exhibiting, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. So this month's got a lot more in store, more stretch goals being announced very soon, and we'll see where it goes by the end of the month. Let's see where we go. So you guys, thank you so much, and I will sign off for now. I'll catch you in the Discord server. We can keep chatting later today, and we will have more Shadowdark soon. So, all right, y'all. Thank you. I'll catch you later. All right, bye.